Good afternoon, and welcome to this edition of What You Gotta Say. As you can see, the Title IX. We just came over a landmark celebration of Title IX, yet the people who are really involved have noticed that Title IX has made a great deal of advancement for women's sports. However, Title IX is being stymied by a lot of loopholes, and we're going to dive into that right after this break. So I'm going to see you in 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
Your small business struggled through the pandemic to stay afloat. You need more exposure. Radio and printed ads are good for pet liners. Television commercials are overpriced. Social media ads start cheap, end up expenses. You need an ad team that can get you multimedia exposure. You need MyTV. MyTV will develop a commercial tailored to your business. To get your maximum sales, contact sales@theratemytv.church.
Okay, Title IX, huge landmark decision. Title IX basically means in Webster, or defined as no person in the United States shall be on the basis of sex be excluded from participating in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activities receiving financial assistance. Now, Title IX is a federal civil rights law in the United States of America. It was passed as part of the Education Amendment of 1972. It prohibits the sex-based discrimination of anyone or any school or educational program that receives federal funds. Now, this act is public law number 92 318-86. Now, among other statutes, the U.S. Department of Education, it is that Title IX is enforced under the Office of Civil Rights. No person in the United States, right, based on sex, right, from any institution or education that receives financial assistance. Now, approximately to date, there are 17,600, right, local public schools and private schools that receive federal funding for Title IX. Now, here is the most incredible and fun part about this, right? Over 5,000 post-secondary institutions and charter, and even for charter. And this includes things like libraries and museums, also vocational rehabilitation agencies, and education, that even down to the District of Columbia, which they did try to make a state, but everybody likes it being a district. Now, any recipient that receives department funding must operate its educational programs or activities in a non-discriminatory manner, free of discrimination based upon sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, And some key areas which the recipients have that they're now going into include things like discrimination for recruitment, admission and counseling, financial assistance, athletes, sex-based harassment, which encompass sexual assault on other forms of sexual violence, treatments, treatments of pregnancy, parenting, and students in the treatment of the LBGQI plus. Any can immediately, feel threatened, intimidated, or coerced, and feel that they're discriminated against, and it's covered under Civil Rights Act. Now, the Office of Civil Rights enforces this vigorously, and people will say that that's not altogether true, because we just went through a situation with the U.S. women's gymnastics, in which they did a great deal of protesting, reporting of being sexually abused, and it didn't come to fruition for years. But they still say that they investigate every complaint and make sure that everything is in compliance. Now, the Office of Civil Rights gives every institution and the athletes, the women, pamphlets and information about, how to report any acts or any discrimination that they feel. But Title IX, most important thing, and what we have celebrated, is that it has opened up the door for the advancement of women's sports for a great deal of professional, like the WNBA, the Women's World Cup soccer team, and women tennis. Oh, by the way, just announced today, the world's #1 ranked tennis star, Ashley Bartley, she retired today at the ripe old retirement age of 25. What a great life. You making that much money at 25 that you can retire. I should have been a women's tennis player, but I kind of like where I'm at now. But Title IX is not only advanced at sports, but also it is open and broadened the field for women becoming things like sports reporters, sports journalists, athletic directors, and most important now, sports attorneys, and what we've seen recently, NFL coaches. Now, here it is. Civil rights. Hard fought, okay? A great deal of wrangling to get civil rights. Yet, Title IX is supported and enforced by civil rights. But what a lot of people have been running into and finding out that Title IX also has loopholes, a lot of loopholes. It's got more loopholes than the actual civil rights bills. Now, but one of the loopholes, like they ran into the civil rights of separate but equal, well, Title IX, it's separate and not equal. Case in point, here's a picture of the NCAA men's training facility. Now, you saw it on YouTube. One of the women took a picture and did a video of the NCAA women's training facility. Big difference, separate, but definitely not equal. Now, here's another loophole involved. Male professional athletes make on an average 16 to 107% more than women athletes. And you've seen it in some cases, women athletes like Candace from the WNBA, she has scored more points than most of the males, but her salary wasn't even close to the league minimum. Now, this has forced women like the women's soccer team to do some wonderful things like the American practice of protest by suing. Yes, they sued. They get more people at their games. Their games are charged just as much as men's soccer, yet the women athletes receive far less in terms of payment. In fact, in their lawsuit, they won $24 million. With us today to discuss Title IX, he is a women's baseball, softball coach. Good friend, wonderful guy, a lot of knowledge. Please welcome to the show, Dan Prosner, Prosner, right?
Prosser, yes.
Yes. Dan, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Well, it was great. So, how was our facts in the intro? Are we close? We're on the margin here. What are we?
Yes, you're close. You're in the ballpark, so to speak. I think you need to go a little bit deeper with the money that's allocated towards scholarships for women in sports, as well as just the salaries. When you compare and contrast that with MLB, what the bigger problem I would think that most people would pay attention to would be the availability of continuing education finances that are available to women athletes as compared to what they are for men athletes. You often hear that, men get the athletic scholarships because look at football, the stadium's sold out and that's where all the money comes from and that's where it should go. Well, people fail to realize that women's sports still in this country is still in its infancy. And so those type of followings, those cult followings like football has, they don't exist in women's sports because it hasn't been around for the same duration of time as the men's has. But if you pay closer attention, like we had briefly spoke about earlier, at the ratings that were given to the Women's World Series, Women's Softball World Series last year were through the roof. When you see individuals that we spoke of, like Jenny Finch, and what she's been able to accomplish outside of her softball life with the facilities and the teams that she's having success with in North Jersey, it's amazing. And for the first time, I think in a very long time, these young girls have a sports figure who is female that they idolize. And so it's growing rapidly.
Yeah, I mean, Jenny Finch has got to be like the Babe Ruth of women's baseball.
Exactly what she is, and she's continued that into a business that is a successful business outside of her collegiate career, where she was again the Babe Ruth of women's softball. And that's not to say just her. There are girls, when you hear them talk about the Jenny Finches and the Kat Ostroms and the Lisa Fernandezes and the Dot Richardsons as if they were Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, you name it. Any guy in sports, these girls are looking up to them and they're idolizing them and they want to emulate them. The problem is they don't have the same availability. They don't have the same financial backing that the boys do to be able to go to these universities or go to these organizations and be able to compete. It's sad to say that the recreational programs that exist statewide, especially in New Jersey, but outside of New Jersey, have been greatly diminished over the last, I'd say, 6 to 8 years, partially because of COVID, but a lot of it has to do with availability of the sport, and the availability is greater at the higher levels. So what I mean by that is you have girls who want to come out and they want to play for their local team and they just want to have fun. And those programs are dying. The programs that are thriving are the $2,000 registration fee club teams and town travel teams. Not everyone can afford to play there. And what happens, because there is no money at the bottom for a lot of these organizations, they're dying. They're dying because they're not being funded.
Well, they're not being funded in the same way or of discrimination like high schools or public schools in poor neighborhoods. They're saying, well, the school budget is based upon the taxes, therefore they don't have enough money to supply them with all the resources that they need.
And I can't
And
argue that
yet, and
every municipality is
go ahead.
different as far as the availability of funds it has for their recreational programs, right? We have in our town in Voorhees, New Jersey, we're very lucky. We have a mayor and a chief of police who heads up the recreational divisions for sports in this town, who have allowed us to kind of pivot in a direction where we can now generate enough income to sustain our organization through tournament revenue and through various other ways to generate revenue that offsets the town's responsibility to finance our programs. We are pretty much 100% self-sufficient. That being said, there are always things that you would need from your town or from county government that we just have a difficult time getting. And we realize, or we recognize, that there's other programs out there that we see that get AstroTurf fields and safety nettings and multiple buildings for storage for their facilities, where we go out and buy that stuff by ourselves. We have to generate the revenue needed to come up with to be able to get that, and we do a pretty good job with that. But we are very, very fortunate in our organization. Most other organizations, especially in these smaller towns, what is happening is that they're just falling apart and they don't exist anymore. And there are ages-old rules that were established years ago by men who were running these organizations as they did little league type organizations, and they would restrict residency. So if you lived in a town that was very small and they didn't have a team, you couldn't go play in a neighboring town. And so now you don't play at all. So what has happened is that domino effect has been going on for years. And as these smaller organizations fall apart, there's nowhere for these girls to play. We've taken a completely different approach in our town. We will take girls from all over. We will take girls from any town that does not have an organization like ours, and they can come here and play. And we have gone in the face of these other organizations who give you these rules, these leagues that mandate these residency restrictions and prohibit kids from playing, and told them, we don't need you anymore. Okay, we'll finance ourselves. And what we will do is we will give these kids a place to play no matter where they're from. And we still hold the vast majority of our kids in town, but we throw out a wider umbrella. And what we're trying to do, in essence, is save the sport in South Jersey, in our area, because we've seen the effects of not having the financing, not having the fields, not having the support structure behind them at the municipal level. And it's having a long-term negative effect, because now the majority, especially at lower income, they don't have the financial needs. They don't have the financial abilities to pay $2,000 a year to play on a team, and they don't have.
So you're talking about. So you're talking about lower income.
Yes.
Well, so someone living in Camden, it ain't gonna happen.
Right. And I'm born and raised in Camden, New Jersey, and I've seen the complete impossibility of an organization trying to have any type of competitive organization that has the financial means to be able to compete with that. It's impossible. People don't realize that those type of organizations don't have the built-in safety structure, and they don't have the facilities available. They don't have the transportation needed, funding to get them away from those environments, to get them to a safe place to be able to train and be able to be able to compete. And when you speak of like Camden, and I fully understand this, but it's a reality that the more affluent towns around South Jersey don't want to go play there. There's the mystique of, you're going to get shot if you go play in Camden. We're not playing there. We'll just schedule somewhere else. We all know it. Everybody knows it's true. Mm-hmm. It's not only unique to Camden, but there are other areas that are considered high risk that people just don't want to have the problem of having to deal with that. Now there's a easy solution.
Blackwood, Gloucester.
It's an easy solution to that. That is to get these kids to a safer environment that is more I don't know how to more conducive to them playing and people coming to play them as an away team at a safer facility. It's not to say that anything would ever happen. It's just that's the thought process behind when other organizations think of that. If they're paying high dollar, they don't want to take risks.
Well, let's look at the municipality of Camden in terms of budget per child. They are barely breaking $40 per child, so they don't have the resources for $3,000, per child for bats, balls, cleats, etc. They pour all their resources in, the wonderful, sexy, popular sports like basketball, football, and things
Those
like that.
sports,
So.
no, and it is that those sports that excel in those neighborhoods are the ones that are usually financially, the easiest to participate in. I mean, soccer is a ball. You really don't need anything else. A pair of shorts and a square to kick it into, right? Or two cones, or like we used to use, two rocks. The basketball, same. You know what I mean? Like it is what it is. It's because of that financial strain that they don't have the resources to be able to build an organization. We attempted to bring a Camden team into our home to kind of foster them so that they would be able to develop a team. And the reality was they couldn't even get the transportation to get away from their own areas to come to our area to be able to train and practice or even have games.
So
And we're
they didn't have
talking about
they didn't have the resources to hire a van to
They
Uber
tried.
these kids.
they did. That's how we met. We invited them in. They came to our facility and were taking their team pictures in our outfield because they said how nice the facility was. And your heart goes out to that because they shouldn't have to deal with that, right? There should be a funding. There should be something that says, okay, whether it's county, whether it's state, whether it's Title IX, which is federal, and New Jersey should adopt a New Jersey Title IX law that requires funding for those places to be able to push money into these sports to give these kids an opportunity to do so. It's just not there. And for them to say, like, we would love to come play here all the time, but we can't afford, to drive here. We can't get transportation to come here. It's pretty heartbreaking because those kids were dedicated to try and play. And you can tell they had no training. And it's sad. It's sad.
Very sad. So once again, discrimination within a sect that they've got laws to protect them against discrimination. I mean, what?
They're not.
Go ahead.
They're not generally enforced. There's no. So Title IX applies to academic institutions primarily. New Jersey doesn't have a state Title IX law for municipalities. I think Virginia does, and often we go to Virginia to play, and the facilities are amazing. They're beautiful, and it's quite a contrast to what you see when you go playing around there are beautiful facilities in New Jersey. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying that you can tell where the money is when you're down there. You can tell that they're invested into it. Yeah, it's the disparity. I mean, you go right down the street from some of these girls that have fields that are flooded over. They're all natural grass, and you go right down the street and you'll see a cloverleaf 4-piece diamond for the boys that are all AstroTurf, and they're out there playing, and the girls can't. I know there's one municipality neighboring where I'm at here in town that told me we went down there and we tried to institute another recreational division in their town. We knew that they were financially struggling. They're a low-income town. And I went to the meetings for the council to sit down and bring the recreational league back to their town. All they had to do was allow us to use 2 fields that were existing, that were built on Green Acre funding, and allow us to schedule the games, and then we would blend their teams until they had full teams of their own with girls of ours, and they could play at our facilities and their facilities. And their return to us was, well, in May, we have a home run contest, and we convert one of the 4 fields, one of the softball fields, into a baseball field for the boys. And I said, how do you...
In May?
Yeah.
One field.
I said, how do you expect to be able to grow? These girls, everything in softball, I don't know about the others, but everything is going tournament now. So the weekends are the busy time, and the summer is the busy time. And recreational programs are great, but a lot of these girls, they love the tournament format, and that's where everything's going. But
But here is my take. Nothing teaches a child about honor, code, rules, discipline, teamwork, the sense of accomplishment, and increases their self-esteem, like being involved in a sport. So if Camden, they spend so much money with inviting corporations in, has anyone ever said maybe these corporations that we're inviting in and they're getting all these tax credits and tax breaks and all that other great perks for these corporations to be in, maybe they should start adopting and donating to our recreation? Never came to anybody's mind? Any of you politicians that watch my show? Nothing? We're going to be right back because we are far late from taking our break. And I'm with Big Dan here. I mean, he's a coach. He's got a lot of information. And we're going to go into some more of the loopholes in Title IX. I will see you all in 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
Your small business struggled through the pandemic to stay afloat. You need more exposure. Radio and printed ads are good for pet liners. Television commercials are overpriced. Social media ads start cheap, end up expenses. You need an ad team that can get you multimedia exposure. You need MyTV. MyTV will develop a commercial tailored to your business. To get your maximum sales, contact sales@theratemytv.church.
And welcome back. So, Dan, we talked about these corporations in these impoverished neighborhoods who, the taxpayer bear the burden of paying their taxes, property, payroll, etc. A lot of perks. Why is it so difficult for a politician who gets these people in and the politicians who made these tax abatements for these corporations to be in, and the politicians who are making the residents bear the burden of these corporations that are making millions and billions, to get them to donate, maybe $200,000-$300,000?
Right. So it's a good question. And I think it varies from town to town. I don't understand why there's not an infrastructure set up, an administrative infrastructure set up to oversee youth sports in the towns like Camden and some of the towns that are more impoverished, to help to funnel money into those programs. It's not hard. Those negotiations can be done from Jump Street when people come in and want to build those buildings and want to get those tax breaks, and those tax breaks can be offset by an agreement that they would contribute X amount of dollars into the organization, and even help establishing the administrative part so that it's overseen and run properly and not just taken from one person's hands and put into another's. I got to tell you the truth. Even with Title IX, I think it's like 90% of the people who are in Title IX, the universities and the schools, that they don't comply with completely with the Title IX program. You'll
No, shut
right,
your mouth.
right, and there are inherent problems with that as well, because if you're basing it on the Title IX law based on the amount of kids in a program versus boys versus girls, there doesn't have to be equal distribution. From what I understand, it depends on ratio. So if you have 1,000 boys playing baseball and 200 girls playing softball, the money isn't equally dispersed. It's dispersed on that based on that ratio. But what that does is that just enables a program maybe to function, but not to grow. Whereas the overwhelming money put into the boys section allows them to do other things like enhance their facilities and go into an indoor training facility, which the girls have major problems trying to get involved with.
Buy
So
big arenas and stadiums, move people out of their actual houses to get these stadiums in. Huge professional and personal trainers for these boys, enhancement trainers, shot coaches. You got quarterback coaches, running back coaches, line coaches. You got speed coaches. You've got breathing coaches. I mean, you even got sleeping coaches and tutors, because most of them are failing.
that's
But
right.
none of that money goes and is equally distributed upon the girls.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And it's worse in some areas than others, but it's definitely everywhere, even in the more affluent. It definitely exists. Like I said, we've been blessed by the mayor
Location.
here. Yeah, by
And
our
the
location.
mayor. Yeah.
It allows us to be able to function, and allows us to be able to grow and create the opportunity for our girls. We have done that. We've brought in a club because we saw the girls leaving the rec programs and the town programs for the club. So we partnered up with them to create that. That has been hugely successful. Most of our girls stay right here within our program now. Girls from all over wanting to come to our program now. But those monies are always generated by us, right? And so
Yeah.
the 2,000.
And I can tell you, in terms of Voorhees, where I live,
Mhm.
the county doesn't give them squat. So this is all, the township itself.
Right. Where our facility is Green Acres, but the township maintains it perfectly. It's a beautiful facility. It's one of the best in South Jersey as far as tournament venues is concerned. It's definitely one of the favorites.
It is.
But we also, as an organization, spend a lot of money upgrading that place ourselves. The town does help. They pay for the lights. They cut the grass. But we do everything else. Every plate, every mound, every base, every rake, every piece of machineries, garages, whatever it is, we pay for all of that. And it's expensive. So if we didn't have the availability of our tournament revenue, we would fold tomorrow. And that in and of itself, because it's not ever a guaranteed thing either. There's weather issues that concern that, and there's other planning and programming around the park that kind of interferes with things that we do over there. But we manage, and we benefit. We're happy to have that arrangement and that relationship with our local town. That being said, we're unique because we see other towns in the area, some that begin with M, I won't say their names, that are more than willing to take their girls and push them off the field to allow the boys to come on and just practice. They give them off times. They give them the boys don't want to play or practice at that time, give it to the girls. That goes for their in-house training facilities. That goes for their field times. There's some serious abuses of privilege by some other towns around that just take full advantage.
The girls are definitely the second-class citizens.
They are.
Yeah. So how did you get into coaching, especially girls softball?
So, I was a 4-season athlete growing up. I couldn't wait to play the next sport. I couldn't wait, for baseball to end so that I could play football. I couldn't wait for wrestling to end so I could go, do whatever. I was just that guy. And when I graduated, I had a girlfriend of mine who played softball, and I assistant coach for her team. And and I loved it. I got a bug for it back then, but years passed by. And that was until I got married and had my son, who's older than my daughter. I started coaching my son's teams. And my son, he's introverted. He doesn't like the team atmosphere. He's very much so a shy kid. And so he didn't really want to be involved. My daughter, on the other hand, had a natural talent. I could see at a very, very young age. And she couldn't wait to get to the field. And she would be out back having to catch and getting in her brother's way. And she was hitting the ball like I couldn't believe when she was like 3. And I was like, well, here. And she's very successful. She just made the varsity as a freshman. So she's a good player. But through that, as I came up through it and I went to town and she was successful there. And then we went to travel and she was successful there. And now she plays for South Jersey Gators club team and they've been successful. They're just current state champions and she does very well. She just made, like I said, varsity as a freshman. So she has the athletic gene. And that's where it all rooted from. And when I came into this, I didn't know what to expect. Like all men, you think men walk into the softball world, I think, oh, baseball with a bigger ball. It's a totally different game. Yeah. It's completely different game.
No. In fact, they found out on a professional level that softball players have a great deal of a skill set that professional baseball players can't even do. They did the study where they had the professional, home run derby sluggers top 10 take on what was her name? Fernandez?
Yeah, Lisa Fernandez.
That underhand fast pitch, she struck him out.
And she ain't the only one. She's been striking him out her whole life. Yeah, she's amazing. That's where you get into so you see that and you go, every little girl knows her name. Every little girl knows who Jenny Finch is. Every little girl knows who all these players are. And you're like, it's incredible that they now have sports idols that they're seeing on TV for the first time, that their posters are on their wall, that they want to be like. And it's a great thing, but it needs time to grow like anything else. It needs to be propped up. It needs to be supported financially at the state level through all of these programs so that it can really start to flourish, and not just unfortunately, at the people who are financially capable of being able to afford to have their kids play for the teams that can provide that type of training and the facilities that are needed.
But being a father, I mean, you see the discrimination that's happening to your daughter just because of the simple fact that she's a girl, substandard, or has to wait for the boys for the facilities, resources for their schools, for her program. I mean, even talent in terms of, you probably know more about girls softball than some of the coaches that they hire for our high school. I mean, doesn't it?
We like to think so. There's some former players that might argue with you about that. It's one of those things, like no man knows how. Well, there are men who know how to throw fast pitch, but no man knows how a woman throws fast pitch because we don't have the hips, right? So you need to certain skill sets you just can't understand. So, it's a great sport. It's much faster paced than the men's. It's the discrimination that you see. And you know what? You can't blame the politicians all and the men all the time. It's not something that you're actively doing. So I'll give you an example. Every time we tried for the last few years, we paid a lot of rent for indoor facilities because we don't have a facility to train at. We tried to get one built. We just can't get any traction with it. We can't get any help with it. And so we would go to other facilities or we would talk to people about possibly building. And the same thing gets said all the time. Oh, yeah, well, you could do the boys and the girls together. And you're like, yeah, no, you can't. And that's where you attachment and you're like, you can't put 14-year-old boys in a room with 14-year-old girls and expect the girls clam up. They forget about it. It's done. You're over. Your practice is over. The boys gawk and they make comments and it happens in every single time. And to the point where you can't have them blended in the facility. So if you share a facility when that happens, the boys get the preferential time almost every single time. And the girls are like, in grammar school, practicing 8 till 10 at night to try and get practices in. And you're like, this is ridiculous, because the boys were there, but you can't have them together. So they need dedicated facilities of their own, and not co-ed. It doesn't work. It doesn't work on any level above 10. They're very self-conscious about themselves and what they look like in their uniforms and who's watching them and all that stuff. So you have to eliminate that.
It doesn't even work in college. What are you talking about? Dan, they can't get a co-ed team to happen in college. I mean,
right. So that's where you fall into these traps of it's like, okay, a politician doesn't pay attention to that. They don't know that. They don't see it. And so they don't understand it. So they feel like they're doing everybody a benefit by doing A, B, and C, and making it like a co-ed environment. It just doesn't work. It may work in some sports, in some environments. Maybe it works in soccer a little bit, but it's a different dynamic here, and it just isn't. It just doesn't work. And so the funding would be key. It's not hard to get these things done. It's not hard to build fields. It's not hard to buy a warehouse or put it on a private property, or put it on a municipally owned property and allow.
None of those things that you talked about was hard. What's hard is getting equal distribution of federal funds. Right. To go from the boys program to the girls program.
Yeah. 3 years. Now we're a 501c. In the last 3 years, we spent $42,000 1 year to try and hold the facility, and COVID destroyed it, because then we couldn't use it. And it's only used for the winter months for the most part, but we had to pay the full year. And then the COVID came and shut that down. So we literally had for 2 years that we were trying to pay for just to stay alive, and we couldn't afford to do it anymore. So we had to go to outside venues to try and rent the time. They're under the same misguided impression that, you can blend and you can split teams and you can use half and they can use half, and that doesn't work. So what you're left with is off hour times and I'm not going to
look, Dan, I love you. I think you are a phenomenal coach. I think you're a great guy. However, I'm not having my 9-year-old practice until 10 o'clock at night when she's got homework and get ready for school the next day. It just ain't going to happen, brother.
That's right. We agree. That's why we tried to make the moves to stop it. And again, it's nobody's fault. It's just that relationships are built around organizations by people who privately own a lot of these facilities. And when you have an organization that comes in with 40 boys teams versus 10 girls teams, as an organization that's for profit, who are you going to want to rent to prime time to? The boys, right?
The boys. Yeah.
Of course, you're getting 40 teams on that exchange as opposed to 10 over there. So even from a business model, it doesn't make sense to align yourself with the girls, with it's more profitable to align yourself with the boys. And that's where the funding needs to come from. The tax dollars. The funding needs to come from the state or the municipalities to provide these facilities to be able to get these girls out and playing.
And it needs to be earmarked directly for girl sports.
They can directly earmark it to a specific project if they wanted to. There's enough that from all of these facilities that you could just say, hey, I'd be happy if you could just do this. I'd be happy if you could just put fences up in the outfield, or if you could just, get us a place to practice at in January and February, or put safety netting over there. There's a lot of things that you could say, you don't have to give me the money directly. Could you please do this?
Right.
And if the funding is there, I don't think that they would have a problem for it. The problem for it is that the funding's not there.
Yes. Now, we're going to be right back, and we're going to talk about funding, some loopholes that are happening right now, and the advancement that we can see with women in professional sports. And I'm with my co-host today, Dan Prosner, women's girls softball coach extraordinaire. I'm Vincent Squire, and we'll be right back. 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
Your small business struggled through the pandemic to stay afloat. You need more exposure. Radio and printed ads are good for pet liners. Television commercials are overpriced. Social media ads start cheap, end up expenses. You need an ad team that can get you multimedia exposure. You need MyTV. MyTV will develop a commercial tailored to your business. To get your maximum sales, contact sales@theratemytv.church.
And welcome back. We're talking about Title IX, some of the loopholes, some of the experiences that Dan has being a girls soccer coach, and some of the actual issues. So let's look at the athletes that we have today, the women's athletes. I mean, the Winter Olympics, the women were just phenomenal.
They were, and look at women's soccer as well. Look at the Carly Lloyds of the area that are now idolized as women's athletes that every other little girl knows. And you can go sport for sport from Serena Williams and Venus Williams to like you said to a Jenny Finch and to a Carly. These are all girls that are from the area or from the United States at least, and there's a ton of them out there now where they were never heard of before.
Well, we have an American athlete, basketball player, who plays in Russia right now. She's sitting in jail because allegedly they found some drugs in her luggage leaving Russia. But women's sports, in terms of money, they make more money playing overseas than they do in one of the most richest countries in the world.
Yeah, it's insane, right?
It is.
And the crazy part is that the cost for athletes especially at the under 18 age is not different. It's not there. It costs just as much for a girl to play as it does for a boy to play. And so you get to the collegiate level where it becomes about the dollar and the draw. That's where you start to see the disparities come in, right? But what people fail to realize is that the draw is there. You just haven't catered to it, right? It's an untapped resource. And again, I'll reference back to the girls softball World Series and the ratings that they got last year were through the roof. And they went with a program this year that was going to highlight, I think it was like 30 games between the top 12 or 16 teams. Yeah. And everybody's talking about that already. Right. Can't wait to see that. Right. So now you're getting that exposure there. Well, again, if you look at that median cost of a girl to play on a competitive softball team, it's thousands. And so to think that there's no draw for those kids to go and watch a team or go to a venue and watch high level competition in the area is wrong. You could generate revenue from that. You could generate revenue across the board from everything from parking to concessions to, registration fees to play in those areas. Tournament venues are key.
Not to mention all those toys and all those other things that they sell. I mean,
$200 bats.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. $40 baseball hats. I mean, it is. I mean, it is a huge draw, and everybody knows no one is the biggest consumer of money or eliminator of additional income or disposable income than a woman. I mean, this is not me being a knuckle dragon, Cro-Magnon. No, this is for me having 3 wives. I know. Okay.
Right. It's absolutely correct. So, yeah, it's about someone who has the ability and the financial ability to take a chance on building something that could be great. You have growth in the area that could sustain an established venue that could bring in a weekly revenue stream to anybody's town that we have established here, but we're limited on the amount of fields that we have. But no one in South Jersey has ventured to take a shot at, say, a softball World Series or a nationals championship, and there's multiple nationals or regionals championships. They call them that, but they're not,
they're not really. Yeah, they're very, very small region.
Right. Outside of New Jersey, what happens is you get the pay to play venues where you have to buy their hotel rooms. You have to stay where they are. You have to pay the fees for everything, including
you even have to buy their equipment.
Right. They have to stay in the local hotel rooms. They have to eat the local restaurants. They have to buy from the local stores, everything. And so the revenue boost to an area is great for those venues. If you're
looking at a tournament is actually an estimate of a 15 to 32% income generator. I mean, you're talking about above their regular income.
Correct.
Yeah.
You make your area a destination location for things like that.
Correct.
If you center it correctly, and I can only speak to South Jersey, but if you center it correctly in South Jersey, you have the Shore, you have Philadelphia, you have Great Adventure, you have everything within a half hour, 40-minute drive from where the potential revenue or where the potential venue could come. And you could generate 9 months out of the year. The only time you wouldn't play would be the winter months.
But the problem that we have is we've got 2 people. We have one. We've got the group that realizes the potential of this, but don't have the resources to make it happen. And we have the other who have the resources to make it happen, just do not or will not recognize the potential of it. So, I mean, we have to find some way to bridge it. And these politicians and parents, especially, you've got an athletic, as they used to call it, my generation, tomboy girl, it's a wonderful investment in their growth and understanding. Sports does a great deal for the safety, security, and confidence of a child. And even if they don't play professional sports, they do have the tools that they need to be successful in any other venue of their life.
That's right. And all you have to do is sit back and listen to these girls talk without saying a word. And you would hear that. You would hear things like, I want to go play for college here. I want to go play for college there. And there's none of them saying, nah, I'm done softball after I'm 18. I'm not going to play anymore. No, they all want to move forward. They all want to find another place to play. They all are looking for that professional league, and they wish that it existed, and it doesn't. And it's just, it's eye-awakening in that regard. Like you know, and you see the potential for, in our sport, the growth that is there. And I'm sure this is in other sports as well, lacrosse, soccer. We see soccer surging now because of the success of the U.S. teams and basketball with the WNBA. You're starting to see it, but and it's good. the at least the trajectory has been upwards, but it's astounding to me that it hasn't been primed at the pump where it needs to be even more, and that's at the grassroots level. That's at the local town fields. Let's find a way to get these kids out playing, especially post-COVID, to get these kids out playing, to get these kids motivated, to get these kids to see in these games on college and say, I want to go to college.
Get these kids off of their freaking cell phones. So Dan, I know somewhere, because we've got roughly 20,000 YouTube viewers. We've got maybe 35, 40,000 Facebook viewers. We've got 63,000 Roku viewers. And oh, by the way, this is next week. This is going to be rebroadcast on Comcast. So somewhere along the line, someone has some resources to help you, or an ideal of how we can, merge the impoverished areas with your area, or an ear to a politician that can actually earmark, or a corporation that can actually, make some contributions to this. So, or even a skill set that they can come and donate a couple of hours to molding and training these impressionable, sweet little minds to be great contributions to society. So where can they find you? How can they contact you?
So those people do exist. They're volunteers who work at your local Little League softball organizations who don't get paid $1, who don't have to go out and financially support teams, but put in their time and efforts to do so. You would hope that someone out there looks at this and says, oh, you know what? It's not a bad idea. Let's take a chance on some girls. Let's try to build something here. Let's try to move something forward here. And the upside is there's no limit to it. The downside is that you tried to do something that you knew was right. And even if it didn't work, you tried to do something that was right. Right?
Even if it didn't work, you planted the seed in somewhere that's going to actually grow and do wonderful.
Right. So when I started this, I always said that if I could get one kid in college at 10 years of coaching, 12 years with the girls, if I could get one kid to a college, then I will be able to say it was a success. This year we had 6.
Wow. Impressive.
So, in our organization, we had 6. And we will have more.
So they can reach you at www.greatestcoach.
No, coach. There's a lot of great coaches out there. There really is. They just need to be supported. Our website is www.VorhesGirlsSoftballAssociation.com, and we respond to every email as quick as possible. We are always looking for new adventures. I try to do a combination with the Eagles Flag Football League, but it runs directly in competition to our sport, so we can't really do that. We can't breed our own competition. So we wanted to try and do something in the fall for that flag football for the girls league, but we may still do that.
Okay. Well, let me say this for you, Lori, shame on you.
They have the reasons for doing what they did. We just have our reasons for not being able to be a part of that as well. But no, there are people out there who are trying, and give them all the credit in the world, because 99% of them don't get paid for anything that they do, and they don't get any recognition for it.
Okay. You want to shout out a couple of coaches? Go ahead.
I'll shout out to Mark Hutchinson. He's probably the greatest coach I've ever had the pleasure of coaching with. Cesar Garcia, who is a phenomenal instructor. I'll go Lindsay Simone, who's a great pitching instructor right here, works in Voorhees all the time. And I could go up and down. Alex Massa is the president of the South Jersey Gators organization, and there's a lot of heads of organizations that deserve to be mentioned, but I'll go ahead and say these guys, and Paul Maggi.
Because he's only got 30 seconds, so don't get upset with him.
These guys put in their efforts every single day and they try. They really do try, and trying to build something, and hopefully we can keep it going.
Well, Dan Prosser, I mean, you have been a great co-host, wealth of information in terms of women's sports and Title IX. And I really thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Now, for the rest of you that are watching the show, discrimination sucks. It sucks the life, energy, and motivation out of you. And we're talking about discrimination where they're learning about it being girls, little sweet girls that just have a passion and want to play a sport. I mean, isn't it about time that we close these loopholes, that we eliminate these gaps, that we start talking to, our county representatives who come and see us every election cycle and make all of these promises? Isn't it about time that we start talking to them about setting aside and earmarking something specifically for the girls? I mean, it's not that hard. It just takes you to plant that seed, you to light that to light that fire, to light that match, to spark an energy and a desire in somebody that's going to help our children. That's what it's truly all about. Hats off to all the volunteers, because I used to be a volunteer football coach myself. Mount Airy Bantams have produced not only a great deal of children, young boys who have gotten scholarships, but also became professional athletes. But every last professional athlete that we had, and every child who didn't become an athlete and went into the corporate world, they all came back and brought things back to the community to continue to help it grow. This community is doing the same. And I'm hoping that they'll spark a seed that the other communities, the less affluent communities, can merge in, bring your talents, that you can combine resources to actually help our children. Because we cannot sit here and wait for the government to solve our problems. We have to roll up our sleeves and solve them ourselves. So until tomorrow, where we'll have Joe Griffey's, yes, Thursday, Military Show with Joe. I'm Vincent Squire. On behalf of my co-host, Dan Prosner, God bless. Goodbye.